they had nearly called off the search. For 3 endless days, dozens of boots had trampled through the dense undergrowth, flashlights had flickered through the darkness, and helicopters had scanned every canopy break from above. But all they found were false hopes in fading trails. The tension was thick, and faith was wearing thin. That was until a sudden growl shattered the silence of the woods. Ranger, a seasoned 4-year-old German Shepherd from the K9 Search and Rescue Unit, froze mid-stride. His black and tan coat bristled under the rising sun, his breath steady, focused. Unlike his usual systematic scanning, this time his eyes locked onto something deeper in the forest shadows. His handler, Officer Jenna Torres, knew that stance. She had learned long ago when Ranger stopped, you paid attention. Then he bolted. What happened next would not only lead to a miraculous discovery but would leave even the most hardened rescuers wiping tears from their eyes. 8-year-old Ellie Carter had gone camping with her father, Jake, in the heart of Pine Hollow Forest. It was supposed to be a healing escape, a chance to reconnect after months of grief since Ellie's mother passed away. Their weekend had started with laughter around a crackling fire, stargazing, and roasted marshmallows. For the first time in a long while, Jake had seen his daughter smile. But on the second morning, everything changed. Jake stepped away briefly to collect water from the nearby stream. When he returned, the tent was open and Ellie was gone. At first, he thought she was nearby, exploring. But after minutes turned into hours, dread set in. He called for help, and soon the quiet woods became the epicenter of a full-scale rescue mission. Search teams, trained volunteers, and officers worked tirelessly. Still, there was no sign of her. And the chilling temperatures at night added urgency to every passing second. Ranger had an impeccable reputation. 3 missing persons. 3 lives saved. And yet this case was different. The storm that rolled in on the first night had washed away most of the scent trails. The forest was a maze of misleading signs. Still, on the morning of the 3rd day, as despair hung heavy in the air, Ranger's instincts kicked in. Sniffing at a mossy patch beneath a broken pine branch, he caught the faintest trace, something nearly invisible to human senses but powerful enough for his trained nose. "Seek, Ranger," Jenna whispered, her hand steady despite the pressure. With a burst of energy, Ranger plunged into the forest, weaving through brush and branches with unwavering focus. Jenna followed close behind, pushing through brambles, her heart pounding louder than her boots against the dirt. Then they saw her. In a golden clearing, blanketed in pine needles and dappled sunlight, Ellie lay unconscious. Her face was ghostly pale, her lips slightly parted. Scratches ran along her arms, and her clothes were damp from the cold forest floor. She hadn't moved in hours. But what stopped everyone in their tracks wasn't just Ellie's fragile condition, it was what surrounded her. Perched on her chest, shoulders, and even nestled near her head, were 5 tiny forest owls. Motionless, calm, as if keeping silent vigil. And standing beside her, his thick rescue harness gleaming and his eyes soft but vigilant, was Ranger. He didn't bark or whine, he simply laid down beside her, curling his body to provide warmth. He gently placed his head over her chest, as if shielding her from the cold. When Jenna approached and knelt beside her, Ellie stirred faintly. Her lips parted with a whisper that was barely audible, "Mom?" "No, sweetheart," Jenna said, tears welling in her eyes. "You're safe. You're going to be okay." Ellie was airlifted to the nearest hospital. She was severely dehydrated and weak, but doctors were astonished she was alive. Somehow, through freezing nights and near starvation, she had held on. Later, when she could speak clearly, Ellie shared something no one expected. "I wasn't alone," she said quietly. "The owls stayed with me. And a big dog, he came out of the trees. He laid beside me. He chased the bad shadows away." Jake stared, overwhelmed. You saw Ranger? Ellie blinked. I thought he was a wolf. But he had a shiny vest. He was nice. He kept me warm. The story swept across the country. News reports, documentaries, animated recreations, everyone wanted to know about the brave dog who lay beside an unconscious girl and the owls that guarded her like tiny sentinels. Social media lit up with hashtag Ranger the Rescuer and hashtag Owls and Angels. The story sparked hope in a world that often felt short of miracles. Ellie's reunion with Ranger a week later was captured on video and went viral. As he entered the room, Ellie gasped and reached out with trembling fingers. Ranger gently nuzzled her hand, then laid his head across her lap, closing his eyes in peace. He remembers me, she whispered. Of course he does, Jenna said, smiling through tears. You're his mission. His miracle. In honor of her rescue, the Carters founded Ellie's Wings, a non-profit dedicated to funding canine search and rescue units and protecting forest wildlife. Ellie became its youngest ambassador, often speaking at schools and events about the dog who saved her in the forest that watched over her. Ranger continued his service for 2 more years before retiring with Jenna. But his visits to Ellie never stopped. On every birthday, every milestone, he would return the tail wagging, eyes bright. Every time, Ellie greeted him with the same words. You didn't just find me, you stayed. Because sometimes, heroes are silent. Not every hero roars or flies. Some wear fur, carry no weapons, and yet protect us with every heartbeat. Ranger didn't just locate a lost child. He showed the world what loyalty looks like when no one is watching. And in doing so, he left behind a legacy that no storm, no time, and no forest could ever erase. Speech balloon, did this story move you? Comment below. Backhand index pointing right, would you trust a dog like Ranger to protect your child? Backhand index pointing right, have you ever experienced a miracle in the wild? Pushpin, subscribe to Positive Tales for more heartwarming true stories that celebrate the bond between humans and animals. Bell, don't forget to like, share, and hit the bell for more real-life heroes. Because in our darkest moments, even a quiet bark can become the loudest cry of hope.